Okay. Okay. It is now. We're just trying to figure this stuff out right now. It is 8 o'clock on Sunday, February the 11th. It's Super Bowl Sunday. And today we're going to be speaking about or really responding to other questions. And we're trying to figure out exactly how we can do that. Ideally, what we want is to be able to have people show up on the live stream and ask questions. Right now, I don't see how that's possible unless somebody registered. So, what I'd like anybody that does have a question to do, just feel free to use the comment section. I think that my partner, Justin Paperny, is on the program. And I don't know if he's joined yet, but I see his little information there. I see some other people there that are bringing their information on. I appreciate Ella Luti Lama and Angel Mendez. I really want to talk a little bit about how this particular program works. You see, previously we had a a private group. It's part of our mitigation arc courses, and people would pay. I think they paid $1 a day or $7 a week to be a part of that, and it was great, but it was pretty expensive to run that site, and it wasn't effective because we weren't able to get as many people on there as we would like. We want to in order for us to do our advocacy work, we truly have to change the system. We have to bring more awareness to how the system operates, and that means we need to hear from you. So one thing I can promise you on these webinars is that we will never ask anybody. I will never ask anybody to do anything I didn't do while going through 26 years in prison, number one. And number two, I'll never lie to you. There's nothing anybody can't ask me, but my real goal is to figure out how do we use YouTube Live in such a way that it's not me delivering a monologue, but rather responding to questions and questions what anybody has about any stage of going through the prison system. I see Rhonda is on here, and I just want to say hi to Rhonda. I want to say hi to everybody who's on here, but I'd really hope that we would be able to have this interactive system. And I'm very confident that our team is going to figure out how to do that. So that I think what somebody is going to have to do is register, and then they get a link, and then they come in. But if Justin, my partner, is able to communicate because he's used this platform before, I think that would be very helpful. Justin, were you not able to click a link and come on into the program? Let me know while I try and filter through these questions and respond to those questions, because I want everybody to see I'm here to listen and to respond to questions that anybody has. So I don't see a question from Ella Luti. I don't see a question from Angel yet. Alec, I do see you there, but I don't see your questions. Fluid Exotics, I don't see a question. If there is a question, I don't see it. So I'm going to just keep scrolling down this list. I see my friend Scotty there, who's doing an amazing job of putting together a new RDAP program for people. Angel, I just want you to know I appreciate you. And Rhonda, I'm very happy to see your question. That's the first question that I saw. And it says, after incarceration, how do you navigate problems with the IRS? Do family members have to do this for you? Well, the IRS is, I think, not only a problem for people who are coming out of prison, but for all Americans. And it's super important to be thinking about that. In fact, it's one of the things that we're doing right now is creating courses for people in prison in how to learn about concepts that they may not have access to, such as decentralized finance that really allows people to live a more private life rather than having the government involved in every decision that you make. But of course, even while somebody is in prison, they do have a duty to pay taxes. I paid taxes while I was in prison. I got married while I was in prison. But because we created businesses that generated a revenue stream, I still had to pay taxes. And in fact, we felt really proud about that. While I was incarcerated, I could figure out a way to earn an income, and anybody else can do that. So the strategy that worked for me was to work very closely with, in the beginning, before I got married, with my sisters who really presided over my financial affairs. And then when Carol became the center of my life, we got married in 2003. She would coordinate, and we built a number of businesses together that allowed us to earn an income. And of course, those were taxable earnings. So I filed taxes right from prison, and I filed taxes every year since I've come home. Um, I've written a lot about that in Earning Freedom and in my other books, but certainly every citizen has to comply with all of the laws of the United States. Being in prison does not absolve us of having to follow the law. And if we make money, we absolutely have to file taxes. So I did file taxes when I came home. While I was inside, I would suspect that if somebody doesn't have an understanding of the U.S. tax code, that is a great project for somebody to be learning while they're in prison. You know, there's a tax code that influences every American citizen, and a lot of people go to prison or face challenges from the criminal justice system because they didn't file taxes. So it's important to understand that, and family members who, of course, are can be very helpful. So I see it says she Watkins, and it asks me if I can see you on there. Well, I can't see you right now, she Watkins, unfortunately. I wish that I could. I give you my word that over this week, we're going to try and figure out how to make it so that everybody knows how to show up on these webinars and actually participate. It's one thing, it'll never cost anybody anything to be here. Angel Menendez says, I have to plea this Friday and is nervous. Well, Angel, I could understand that you're nervous about this plea, but I want you to look at it from a different perspective. It's an opportunity for you to begin sowing seeds for the next chapter of your life. And I want you to be thinking about what steps can you take at that sentencing hearing, but what also can you take on the other side of that sentencing hearing? And all of that really begins in this crucial era between the time of your plea on Friday and the next step, which is going to be the pre-sentence investigation report. Now, we do have a really low cost. We're sponsored by White Collar Advice, and they are the ones that have taken over the expense of running the low cost site, which is Mitigation Arc Courses. And there's a course on there on the pre-sentence investigation report and what you can do to start sowing seeds to influence that report in a manner that works for you. Once we figure out how do you get on this interactive webinar, I want you to be able to talk with me and have a conversation. But for now, I don't want you to be nervous, Angel. If to the extent possible, I want you to know this is just a step in the process, and it's a step moving closer to when you put this behind you. So I hope that's helpful to you. I do encourage you to reach out to members of our team so that you can learn more about what you can do. And John, I want to say good morning to you. I want to say Fluid Exotics. It says, I have a question. I have been sentenced to 42 months. How much time will I physically spend inside of prison before, and that's a great question. So 42 months, let's just kind of break that down in my head. And I'll tell you what that means. So on 42 months, you're going to get various credits that go in addition to the calendar days. And if you visit our website, I'm going to see if I can bring that website up right now, so I could tell you, but I'll be talking about it with you right now as you go. Let's see if I could share my screen right now, present, and I want to share my screen. Okay. I want to share a window. This is the window I want to share. And so you should be able to see this website right here. This is Prison Professor's website right here. And if you go up to this section, you'll see a section there that says calculators. And if you click that calculator section, so you want to go to prisonprofessors.com, go to the calculators, click calculators, and you will be able to pop up and see this release date calculator. And if you have a 42-month sentence, you can kind of work your way through this calendar to get a projection. But one thing I'll say is that at the end of the day, these are projections because everything has to go right. Now I'm just going to kind of try to break it down for you. With a calendar, with a sentencing projection, you got to understand there are calendar days. Okay, that's one step to take it into consideration. The second, of course, is the what's called the statutory good time, and in federal prison, you get 15% of the 42-month sentence. So just off the top of my head, I have a calculator right here. I can tell you that you have roughly 42 times 0.15. That's going to bring you off about 6 months. So 42 minus 6 takes you down to about 36, right? So that's 36 months. But then there's another factor, and I don't know whether you qualify for the RDAP program. If you do qualify for the RDAP program, that would take 12 months off of that, and you complete it successfully. If you don't get the credit for RDAP. But if you don't have what's called a disqualifying offense, you would then get what's called earned time credits. And those are a little bit different from statutory good time because you have to serve every month in order to get the earned time credits. And for the first 6 months, you'll get about 10 days of earned time credits every month. After your second team meeting, which typically takes place in your 6th or 7th month, you'll get 15 days of earned time credits every single month. So basically, with RDAP, I would say you'd probably serve in prison on the 42-month sentence, maybe 20 months, maybe 18 months, somewhere in there, because you're going to transition to a home confinement program. Probably a little less, actually, more like 15 months. I'd have to do some math on it. But the back of the envelope with RDAP on 42, you'll probably do 17 to 20 months, somewhere in there. If you don't have RDAP, I'm going to just guess 36 months plus 12 months, 24, maybe you'll do 24 months, somewhere in there. So the good news is 42 months is what you will get if nothing goes right. I'm going to bet that things will go right. And we certainly have a lot of free information on prison professors that will show you the strategies that I used. And you're more than welcome to come back to any of these webinars. We hold the webinars every single day. Weekends, it's at 8 a.m. Weekdays, it's at 4 p.m. So let's go to the next question. And that is from, I wish I knew how to spell that name right, but I'm going to say Ali Wuti. Question: what's your advice for someone who wants to get off probation earlier? That's a great question. I don't know what stage of the journey you're in, but one thing I always say is it's never too early and it's never too late to start sowing seeds for a better outcome. So the best, it goes to that analogy that I've heard and stolen many times before, where I said the best time to plant an oak tree is actually 20 years ago. The second best plant seeds for an oak tree is actually 20 years. The second best time is today. So regardless of what stage of the journey you're in, today is a great day to begin sowing seeds. Now, I would encourage you to learn as much as you possibly can to work toward advancing your early termination of supervised release. And the way that you would do that is the same way that you would go about building your career in life. You want to have a plan. And that plan should include, clearly what you want to do. You want to get off of early supervised release. I got off of supervised release after a year, but it was because I had started sowing seeds at the very start of my journey when I went into prison. And I was in prison for 9,500 days, so 26 years. But all the way through, I was memorializing and documenting the journey. That's what I think you need to do, is be building a story that demonstrates why are you a worthy candidate of early termination. And to the extent you work hard, you build a plan, you put priorities in place, you then build your tools, tactics, and resources that will advance you as a better candidate. That's what you're looking to do. I was very public in how I did that all through my journey. I focused on, instead of focusing on what I wanted, I tried to focus on what will the stakeholders that are ahead of me, what will they want? And that led to me building a constituency of people who supported me when I got out of prison. Actually, while I was going through prison. And then when I got out, they advocated for me to get early termination. So Your question is very broad about like how to build a business plan that will help you build the next stage of your life, but I know you can do it. I would start by say building a plan. What's going to differentiate you and make you extraordinary and compelling? And in what ways are you going to memorialize and document that story? You can see how I do it by, if you look through our websites, you will see like a timeline that shows how I did it. I would encourage you to try and emulate that timeline, but build your own. You get right. In order to get a better outcome, you've got to be able to build your plan, and it's got to be your plan. It can't be my plan. It's got to be your plan. This is a self-directed pathway to make things happen in your life. And every individual is just that. It's an individual. So you got to have your plan. You got to be willing to do hard things. And those hard things are what other people say you can't do. And you've got to do them every single day. And, I had to do them for decades. I'm still doing it today. That's what I want you to be thinking about. And then, you effectively have to write your story. Every day you have an opportunity to write your story and demonstrate what makes you special, what makes you an extraordinary and compelling character that can overcome the crisis of a criminal incarceration. And anyone can do it. When I went to prison, I was facing life without the possibility of parole, but I never saw that. I always saw, how do I want to emerge from this experience? And I wanted to get out with my dignity intact and with opportunities to prosper. That's what we want for every member of our community. So I really encourage you, find your way, put a plan together, put priorities in place, build tools, tactics, and resources, execute your plan, making adjustments as necessary, but build that support system along the way. And that strategy that I used, and you could follow it on my timeline, I believe will help you. Okay. And so let's go to the next question. Yes, that made sense. LOD, I see. I would love to talk to you guys about my current situation, Michael. Well, look, I want you to know my main role is in advocacy and trying to change the entire situation, but you could always work with our team. And if you visit White Collar Advice, that's our sponsor. That is a group that provides that really boutique service of working interactively with people. And if you just fill out a form, one of the team members will call you. On Prison Professors, there's also a lot of free information. My role really is about advocacy and changing the whole system. So I don't generally do one-on-one work, because then I wouldn't get any work done in trying to do the advocacy work, which I'm fighting for, which is going to be introducing a concept such as federal work release programs, more access to home confinement, more access to furloughs and community. That's what's really important to me. And in order for that to work, we have to have a team. So I would encourage you to reach out with our team, and I know that they can help you, LOUT. And if you don't have financial resources, use the free ones on Prison Professors. And I've got now Mike Bike. My understanding, and I'll just share the screen, is that under the First Step Act, you can get up to 365 days off for good time, in addition to the 85%. My question is, what happens with the extra good time? So extra good time, these are really legal terms that you're asking about, Mike. Extra good time is no longer available. That was available to me, right? I was under a different sentencing law, and my sentencing law required that I had a 45-year sentence, and I got various types of good time: statutory good time, extra good time. I think it was it. Statutory good time, extra good time. Maybe there was another type. I don't remember. But extra good time, Congress did away with. And it was the reason that on 45 years, I could get out in 26 years, because I had extra good time. So I didn't get out one day early. I just got all the extra good time. Under the law that exists for anybody who has been sentenced after November the 1st, 1987, the only good times that are available is called statutory good time, which is projected into the future. So you get that as soon as your judge sentences you. It's projected that you're going to get 15% of that sentence. Besides projected good time, statutory good time, there's earned time credits. And you're right, you can get 365 days off of the sentence through earned time credits. The only other mechanism is residential drug abuse program, which also gives you 365 days. That's over and above These are all cumulative. So statutory good time, RDAP, and earned time credits all can apply. But you continue earning earned time credits under the First Step Act, even beyond the 365 days. And what happens with those is they go into a credit into your account. And this is only really applicable to somebody who has a sentence that is longer, and I would say you have to have like a sentence of over 7 years for this to really matter. But if you have a sentence for over 7 years or 10 years or 15 years and you've been in long enough, you will have continued to get those time credits, and they will just mean that you serve a portion of your time in a federal prison, and you serve a portion of your time that you cash in those extra credits to go home earlier. Because under the Second Chance Act, a person only has up to 1 year of time in a residential reentry center. Those extra time credits that you would continue earning under the First Step Act, they would trump that statutory, the Second Chance Act, and allow you to serve potentially 3 years or 5 years or 10 years at home. So you're still beholden to the Bureau of Prisons. You're just serving that sentence at home. And in theory, that's the way that it works. So can I get more than 12 months home confinement, halfway house time, even with RDAP? Well, again, it's going to depend on your sentence, Mike Bike 100. So I'm going to scroll down, and maybe you will tell me what your sentence length is, and then I can give you more better guidance. So I'd have to know what your sentence length is. Angel, thank you. Mike Bike again, can a judge sentence you for more than 12 months home and BOP might honor it? Well, when you're asking can and capacity, you're asking about a capacity. A federal judge can do anything within the law. Okay. I don't think a judge would issue you 12 months of home confinement, but the judge could give you what's called a split sentence. Maybe he gives you 6 months in the BOP followed by 36 months of home confinement. Well, that means you have 6 months that you owe to the Bureau of Prisons, and you may owe 36 months on what's called home confinement. But that's now you've transitioned, right? Remember, when the judge sentences you, he sentences you to the custody of the Attorney General. Okay, judge will say, I hereby sentence you to the custody of the Attorney General for X amount of months. Okay. After that sentence is imposed, you transition out of the judicial branch of government and into the executive branch of government. That's when you are working with the Bureau of Prisons. When you finish your obligation to the Bureau of Prisons, you go back to the judicial branch, and that's when you serve supervised release under the control of a probation officer. But when the way that you asked your question, Mike, can a judge sentence for more than 12 months in home confinement? The answer is yes, but he would have to sentence you what's called a split sentence, which is partially in the Bureau of Prisons under the executive branch and partially on home confinement under the judicial branch. It's not a very typical thing, but if you ask me, can he? Yes, he can absolutely use his discretion, and the prosecutor can object, and the defense attorney can ask. But I would encourage you, these are legal questions that you should ask your attorney. And I would also ask you to be strategic. Remember that when you're going into this system, you're effectively fighting a war. Okay. And you've got to be willing to lose some battles in order to win the war. And the war is to get your liberty back at the soonest possible time. That's the goal. Okay. And of course, you don't want to serve time in prison, but what you want is not necessarily the same thing as what the system sees. So I would really encourage you to think about the best possible outcome, and then architect a strategy that will have the best possibility of giving the best possible outcome. Don't architect a strategy that's an impossible outcome. For example, let's just say I'm a real estate guy and I want to develop a building. Okay. I want to develop a skyscraper, okay, of 50 stories, okay, which is going to cost, $50 million. Okay. That strategy may be what I want, but it's not a realistic project for somebody like me who did 26 years in prison and doesn't have access to $50 million in capital and is a felon and has been sued and has all these complications. There are always complications. And we have to make a strategy that will get you the best possible outcome. That's the strategy that got me through 26 years in prison. I don't want you to serve 26 years in prison, but I want you to be a realist. Your mom knows you don't belong in prison. Your dad knows, your wife knows, your kids know, but none of those wants are relevant. What's relevant is what's the battle ahead of you? What is the prosecutor going to ask for? What is the judge going to see you as? In what ways are you different from everybody else that goes before that sentencing hearing? The more you engineer that path, the better off you're going to be. That's when you're going to start restoring confidence and feeling as though you are the CEO of your life. You are in charge. You are going to build a pathway to success. I'm Creed White. I am out awaiting sentencing on 2 cases and have a violation hearing that I performed illegal things while out on pretrial. Any thoughts on that? Yes. I'm sorry to hear that you're going through this complication, Creed White. I did that. Okay, so you're not speaking about something that I don't have personal experience with. I was charged with operating a continuing criminal enterprise in 1987, and I was facing life in prison. And just because I got arrested didn't mean the crime that I was involved in stopped. So as a continuing criminal enterprise, that means I had people that the government said reported to me, and they were right. I was just not willing to accept responsibility early, so I went through prison. I mean, I contested everything. I went to trial, and while I was going through trial, the crimes were ongoing. Well, the government later found out because other people got caught, and they testified that I was still the leader of that. So I got indicted a second time, not a violation like you're talking about. I actually got indicted while I was sitting inside of the county jail. So I made every bad decision a guy could make. Now, the good news about that, Creed, is you can see, regardless of where you were, you can always architect and navigate a path to get back to success. But it's not going to happen by accident. You absolutely need your plan, and then you need to execute that plan with your dignity intact and say, okay, here's where I am. I made these decisions, and I'm going to do better. And to the extent you do it well, opportunities are going to open. So you're out waiting sentencing on 2 cases and you have a violation hearing. There's a possibility that a judge remands you and brings you into custody. I mean, there's been numerous times that has happened. I mean, right now, in the case right now, there's Sam Bankman-Fried, a very famous case, which is an absurd case in my view to have him locked up, but he was out on bond. The judge said you were not allowed to communicate with certain people or do certain things. He violated that order. He had a hearing. They put him in prison, and he's been sitting in detention for the last several months. You saw that in the case of many people, that they get a bond, and that bond is conditional about you following the rules. There's a possibility you go to jail. Well, I never got out after my initial arrest, okay, until I finished my sentence. So I'm telling you, it's not easy, but I can tell you how to get through. You've got to have a plan. You've got to put priorities in place. And for every person, it's different. I can't give you my plan. You're probably way smarter than I was when I was a kid. I went to prison when I was 23, and, I had to figure it out. And I didn't figure it out until after a jury convicted me, and I faced new charges for perjury and whatever else. I mean, I don't remember. It was so long ago. I was arrested in 87, and it didn't get out until 2013. But as you can see, even on a Sunday morning, I'm devoted to the cause. This is like a ministry for me to try and help more people get better outcomes than I got. And that requires you to be, you got to be the CEO of your life. You've got to architect a plan, build your priorities, build your tools, tactics, and resources, and execute that plan every single day. On Prison Professors, you can get the roadmap totally free. It's what I did, and I want you to see that as well. So, Creed, I wish you the best. You're always welcome to come back to these live interactive webinars. We will find a way to bring people online, but I want to keep this free. So I don't know what software I have to buy, but we'll figure it out. Okay, let me go to the next guy, and that is Rachel. I know Rachel. I've spoken with you before. Even though I am unable to complete the logistical data portion, should my release plan be submitted in part to the judge prior to sentencing? I can tell you the origins of our release plan. Those who don't know, I go into federal prisons and teach classes, and we have a class that's a First Step Act approved class. It's called Preparing for Success After Prison. And through that work, I got to interact with, scores of, I mean, I visited like 40 federal prisons, and I interacted with wardens and interacted with directors and people in the Bureau of Prisons. And I learned the importance that they are placing in release plans. And my continuing advocacy is about, moving the needle or advancing the First Step Act so that everybody qualifies. Number one. Number two, not only do I want everybody to qualify for the First Step Act, I don't want to see these limits of 12 months. I want you to be able to earn your freedom. In fact, that's the name of my book. I got it right here. Right? I started advocating for this while I was going in prison, earning freedom. It's about measuring justice not by the turning of calendar pages, but rather by how hard an individual works to reconcile and make amends and show that he could function as a law-abiding, contributing citizen, Rachel. And the release plan would become a tool that we intended to use to advance that advocacy. Nobody can change the system for one person, but as we've shown through the First Step Act, if you could change the law for 100,000 people or 1 million people, everybody benefits. And that's the beauty of advocacy, is you've got to try and change the entire system. So when I created the release plan workbook and courses and so on, it was specifically to show what's different in your life after sentencing. I didn't think about using this as a sentencing, but many of the people who have done these release plans are using them at sentencing, and judges have been very impressed. They want to see somebody who is actually thinking about how am I going to make amends? How am I going to reconcile? And the judges have commented and said to people, we've never seen a release plan like this. And that is a very favorable reason that you might consider to ask your lawyer to submit that. It's super important to recognize the importance of a sentencing hearing and to recognize you are crucial to this. You are more important than anyone in a sentencing hearing. And to the extent you're able to build a good case to help people see you differently from what a prosecutor may want to present you as, you are going to advance the ball. And that's what we're trying to get people to see. Advance the ball every single day. Nobody can change the past, but you could always work towards something better. And you can get all that information showing you again how I did it on Prison Professors, or how I've interviewed other people who have done it. If you need somebody to help you, and I think you are a member of our community, I just don't really do the one-on-one stuff. But if not, you could certainly reach out to our partners at White Collar Advice who sponsor the nonprofit. Alec, for example, is a member of our team. I got off supervised release after 18 months. I was supposed to be on for 36 months. My release plan played a significant role. So there's, a validation of somebody who used these processes to influence a better outcome in their life. Angel, will my children writing a character reference letter be helpful? My supervisor is fearful to write one. Look, that's a big thing, right? People want to support you, but they recognize we got an era of big government, and some people may not want to assist with writing character reference letters. Absolutely, I think your children should write a character reference letter, but let's remember the essence of what a character reference letter should be. Okay? A character reference letter should not be telling the judge what to sentence you as. A character reference letter should only be about character. It shouldn't comment so much on your crime, other than you've been honest about discussing the crime and what you're doing to make things better. So I'm going to just kind of dictate, what is a character reference letter? What should it say? If I was writing one for my father, it would say, Your Honor, my name is Michael Santos, and I'm writing this character reference letter with hopes of helping you get a better understanding of who my dad is as a human being. He was the type of person that was always home for dinner and made it super important for my sisters and I to understand the importance of family. And I know that this is tearing him apart, that he is going through this criminal justice system right now, and it's tearing our entire family apart. And I know that you have a lot more information about the case than I will ever have, but I will say that my father was honest with me. And he came and he sat down, and with tears in his eyes, he told me how ashamed he was, not only because he was potentially going to prison, but also because he hurt through his crimes, he violated the social contract and has violated trust and disappointed me by giving me a bad role model. But I would always say I always saw my dad as something different and something more. I admired him for having the courage to come and walk me through what he did. But more importantly, I'm grateful and respectful of my father for what he plans to be. He's been volunteering with our school, and he comes and he actually spoke to all of our students to talk about the shame he felt for what he had done, which I thought took a lot of courage because he knew there's a good chance he wouldn't be there for me when I graduated high school. And I will just wanted you to know that I always saw my father as a good provider, an honest person, a good husband to my mother. And he made this decision, and he understands the recklessness of that decision that has resulted in him going into the criminal justice system. But he's about looking at the future and making amends and reconciling with society and providing the best role model of how to respond to a problem for my sisters and me. And for that reason, I'm grateful that I have him in my life. I wanted you to know that I'm proud of him. And if you find him as a worthy candidate for leniency, I hope that you will have mercy on him at sentencing. But that I make that request with total respect for the court and the process. I just wanted you to know I love my dad, and I'll always be there for him. That character reference letter, notice I didn't mention anything really about the crime. I didn't say he shouldn't be going to prison. I didn't say keep him home. I didn't do any of that, right? I tried to just focus on the character. And if you could coach your child in doing that, Angel, I think it will serve your interests well. Would you be willing to speak with my law classmates? That is part of advocacy work. We do a lot of that kind of thing. And so, Angie, first of all, congratulations on getting into law school and working. And, reach out to us, because that is really what I do, is focus on advocacy. And if you're, I don't know where you are. I live in Orange County, California. It's harder for me to get in person, but I'm always looking to expand awareness on why we need to change America's prison system. And so, sure, you could reach me through the Prison Professor's website. And Christy, how are you, Christy? And Dr. Grogan, what is the difference between probation and parole? For probation, are there rules we should be concerned about? I'm really hopeful, Christy, that your husband is coming home soon. I know the last time that I spoke with you, he was having some challenges with getting out on time. The difference between probation and parole is there's actually two different types of sentence, but effectively in practical application, supervision is the same. So when a judge sentences somebody, in the federal system, they will require what's called supervised release. When I got sentenced, I was under a different sentencing scheme, and there was a U.S. parole commission. That no longer exists, so parole's not a factor in your husband's life. Probation is not a factor in his life either, because he already went to prison, and probation is typically a sentence in lieu of going to prison. What your husband will face is what's called supervised release. These are legal terms. It simply means that a U.S. federal probation officer will carry out the conditions of the court. What's super important for you to understand is your husband has to understand the conditions of release and any special conditions of release. And when he gets released with the BOP, he will meet with a federal probation officer, and the probation officer will recite whatever is on that judgment order that the judge gave at sentencing, and he will lay out the different conditions of supervised release. And your husband, it's very important that your husband understands them, because some types of things that can result in a return to prison are not new criminal activity. It's just non-compliance with those conditions of supervised release. For example, filling out a credit card application without permission of your probation officer can result in you going back to prison. Traveling. I live in Orange County, California, for example. If I drove to Bakersfield without permission, that would be a violation, because I didn't have permission and I left the jurisdiction. So there's a lot of things to know. Some things have to do with starting business. Some things have to do with connecting with certain people, or even accessing the internet in some cases. So you really want to understand those supervised release, because there's a very different standard of proof that can result in the loss of liberty. And so I would highly encourage you to make sure that you've read those conditions of supervised release, and don't think that they're a joke, because there are many people serving time in prison for these facts. Angie, how do you get law enforcement involved in a cold case when they have interest in the case law enforcement is involved? And an 18-year-old has been missing 20 years. Another friend. I'm sorry, Angie, that's just not my area. And the one thing I promised at the start of this interview and at all of our interviews is that I'll never ask anybody to do anything I didn't do, and I'll never lie to anybody. And I would be lying if I spoke about this concept of what to do with law enforcement. My area is really in advocacy and trying to change the system. Thank you, Angie. We appreciate you. Rhonda Testerman. Okay, I don't know what that means. Let's see next. I'm guessing 5 to 7. Okay, so Mike, I think that is a response to the sentence that you're dealing with. If it's 5 to 7 months, none of this matters, because then we get good time. If it's 5 to 7 years, that's a good point. I don't think extra time credit will apply to you though, because let's just say it's 5 years, which is 60 months. You'll probably be out in, like, if you do RDAP and do everything right, you'll probably do like less than 2.5 years in prison, probably closer to 20 months or something like that. So those factors of extra good time won't apply to you. And I'm glad you're working with white collar advice. As I said, I don't typically do the advocacy work, that one-on-one consumer work, but I have tremendous trust in our team, and I trust Justin implicitly. We've been partners for longer than, I don't even know, 11 years or 12 years or something like that. And that's his area. My area is trying to change the law so that people like you don't even go to prison. And that's what I'm working on now. I added my release plan to sentencing memo and got well under the guidelines. Rob, I'm super happy for you. And I'm glad. And what I would encourage you now to take next steps. I don't know who you are, or if you've spoken with us before, but make sure that you've looked at the website prisonprofessorstalent.com, because your release plan is much more than words on a page. A lot of people don't understand, how do I use that? And it's essential that you do understand how to use a release plan. I'm going to try and share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. This is an example of a release plan. So actually, I can go here. You can go to Prison Professors, right? Go to the talent, right? And that takes you to an entirely different website, and it's sponsored by our nonprofit, so you don't have to pay a penny for this, okay? Prison Professors Talent is where you want to go, and you want to see, what does a great release plan look like? So look at, like, here's a great release plan, okay? It's like a living LinkedIn page that's still going on while you're in prison, where you're writing about your biography, you're entering information about what you're doing while you're in prison to prepare for success upon release. You're defining the books that you've read. You've got your release plan, and you keep doing this and keep it going. And all of this is part of a tactic or a strategy that you could use to advance yourself as a candidacy for best possible outcomes. You've got to, when you're going into prison with your release plan, you've got to anticipate who's going to see it, right? Staff members are not in the business of saying, I want to make your life easier. And I know you're going in early. It says there February the 29th. I see that, down there, Rob. I see that right there. You're going in on February 29th. That's only a couple of weeks. Now is the time for you to go there, study Prison Professors Talent website. You should open your profile right now, because you could get it started and tee it up. And then you'll learn, how do you keep it going while you're in prison, just using the Core Link system. You don't have to pay us anything to do it. You will have to send the digital files using Core Links to our team at interns@prisonprofessorstalent.com. But that is a project for our nonprofit. Christy, I'm so excited for you. February 21st. Too bad he wasn't home to celebrate Valentine's Day with you, but I hope that you guys get to celebrate it a little late Valentine's Day. Can you discuss earning can you discuss your earning potential post-incarceration? That's a great story. Construction training. I don't know if you know who I am, but I was in prison for 26 years. And I used to tell a story that I was the only guy who came out of prison and had to take a pay cut, because I earned quite a bit of money while I was in prison ghostwriting books for people. The reality that I'll tell you is that it's very hard for people to earn a living coming out of prison. It's especially hard for people who don't have a plan. The good news is if you have a plan and you fully develop that plan, you can come home and crush it. I've never made. I've been out of prison now for 11 years, and I don't think I've ever made less than $250,000 a year, ever, and made significantly more than that. But the reason that I did that is because I understood how to create multiple income streams and how to not wait for a job or wait for somebody to hire me. I'd find ways to create my own income streams in multiple various sources. So whether it's investing, whether it's developing real estate, whether it's developing relationships and doing biz dev work, whether it's writing and publishing or creating, I mean, all of that is what you have to do, and you could start doing that right now. It's kind of like construction training. I don't know what construction training means. I see that. I am going to assume you are in the development business. You start with a blank canvas and you develop something and build it into something of value and increasingly higher levels of value. If you're going into prison, I want you to be thinking, as I see your next question there is, have you finished your PhD? I'll talk about that. You've got to be thinking about this earning issue because it is super important. And the more you think about it, the more you can architect a plan, a blueprint. And that blueprint is what you have to follow. You have to develop your plan, priorities in place, build your tools, tactics, and resources, and execute your plan. I was in prison for 26 years, so it was very important for me to become an expert in what I do, which is I knew I wanted to reform the prison system. So I studied that. You ask if I finished my PhD, the answer is no. I got my undergraduate in prison, my master's in prison, and I did first year at the University of Connecticut toward a PhD, but then a warden blocked me. And that's just part of life in prison, right? You are going to meet obstacles all the time. And my PhD had a requirement that I finish within 7 years. So when the warden blocked me, and the way he could block me is he controlled the mailroom. So he could stop me from getting books from the University of Connecticut. And when I came home, I didn't get out of prison until I was 49. I had to start making money. It wasn't about going back to school for me. It was time for me to start building my path for financial security and prosperity so that I could do what I love to do, whether anybody pays me or not, right? That's why we have prison professors. I'm passionate about changing the law, but I can't change the law without help from you, right? I got to teach people how to be successful when they come out of prison. And I love the questions you're asking. What have been the biggest barriers to reentry? The biggest barrier for me when I got home was learning how to eat with a fork and a knife because I was so used to eating with plastic spoons and sporks, that when I tasted metal or drank out of a glass, it did not feel natural to me. It's one of the reasons that even now I'm still drinking out of plastic cups. So, the barriers that you're going to face upon reentry are going to very much depend upon the preparations that you do while you're in prison. I had to learn how to drive all over again. I don't suspect that's normal for most people, but most people don't go to prison for 9,500 days. So the more you learn, the more you prepare, the more you are going to come back to society with confidence and an ability to make it. Otherwise, there are many homeless camps waiting for people. If you're waiting for the Bureau of Prisons to change your life, you are effectively putting yourself on a pathway for failure. What you've got to do when you're going to prison is figure out the responsibility is yours. So you've got to, as the professor at Stanford that I learned from says, you've got to be willing to do hard things. Okay. You've got to be willing to do them, make sure they align with being your thing. You've got to be willing to do it for decades, and you've got to write the next chapter of your life. You've got to write your story. So construction training, now is the time to get started. If you want some guidance on that, I really encourage you to spend time on Prison Professors, where you can get a lot of that free guidance. If you have resources and you want to look for a guide, I highly recommend our team at White Collar Advice. They who sponsor all of our nonprofit stuff. 10-month sentence starting February 29th. Well, Rob, unfortunately, you do not get statutory good time on a 10-month sentence, but you will get earned time credits. And hopefully you're home in 6 months or so, 5 months maybe. I wish you the best of luck and hope that you connect with us on the other side of the journey. Construction training, I'm very familiar. I did 5 years in CDCR, finishing my master's in May and starting a doctorate. I've been averaging 200K a year. That's it, brother. Killing it. Good for you. You're doing better than just about everybody. It's just a funny name. What's next here? Absolutely in technology, LOL. I would really encourage you to be learning as much as you can about cryptocurrency and artificial intelligence, two of the fastest growing sectors ever. I'm spending a lot of time on that, and we'll be having a free course available on cryptocurrencies, probably starting end of this month. I researched the sequential intercept model. Are your family? I'm a public policy in Los Angeles. Love your work. Well, we love you, and I appreciate you for being here. Construction training. What's next here? Familiar. I think that's it. Okay, so we've been on here for about an hour, 50 minutes. I'll be back tomorrow at 4:00 Pacific. Hopefully, we'll figure out a way to get people on here so that they can, have a more conversational experience with us. But I do urge you to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and maybe if you ring the bell, you'll get to know every time that we're live. We'll do our best to send emails out to community so that kind of as a reminder, anybody can unsubscribe anytime they want. But we appreciate you, and I just want you to know that I'm cheering for the 49ers today, but I'll be working, and be cool. Bye-bye. I'm going to see how to end this stream. All right. Appreciate everybody. Thank you, Angel.